Well, good afternoon, namaste to all of you. Thank you for being here today. And this is a very unusual session. What the distinguished lecture series of the Prem Jain Memorial Trust has so far done in this year is to see that every month we bring you one distinguished speaker who understands the nuance and the contours of the regional landscape, or what we would want to call, say, the landscape at the localized levels of the regions that they represent. And therefore, we have had people from Coimbatore, from Bangalore, Karnataka, we have had from the Western Ghats, and people, many different people who have articulated these concerns of the subcontinent at levels where they aggregate to this larger concern of sustainability that even Dr. Jain Saab used to speak about in his own ways. And as he often said, India is clearly, the guru of such sustainability directions, not because of people like us who live in our cities, but because of the silent millions who have practiced it as a way of life. And they continue to do that, 700 to 750 million people. And the only stark, striking example for all of you that I can take is of any Kumbh Mela. More than 80% of them, they travel with their cloth sacks of rice or rotis or bajra rotis or whatever. They don't buy anything. They come there without any advertising, nothing at all. They know the Magh and the Nakshatra, and therefore they land up there for their holy dip in whether it is, the Narmada, or if it is, if you are talking of places like, for instance, the Jamuna itself, or the Ganga in many places. Everywhere there is this concern at the simple levels of austerity and simplicity for the Indian. Kolkata, for me, has personally represented a region which is extremely sensitive, not because of the burden of population that it has carried, but because it sits in an area where to the east of it, to the south of east of it, and then further to the east of it lies the Sundarbans and the great mangrove forests of the Bengal Delta itself. I won't call it the Gangetic Delta because there becomes the Hooghly, and there's a phenomenal confluence of the Brahmaputra on one side, which becomes the Padma, and then of course the Hooghly itself. What is really important and fascinating about this region is that the flow of water and the silt is such that geological processes over 1 million years and more probably usually unfold in deep time, in complex geological spans of time that appear to occur at a speed where they can be followed sometimes, to the east of Kolkata, in all those hundreds of islands that you have there. From week to week, you can map the change. From month to month, definitely you can map such change. Overnight, several stretches of the river banks will disappear, sometimes taking houses and people with it, as you all know, and constantly there are such reports that appear from Kolkata. Sometimes what also happens is that the shallow mud banks, if you go about 100 kilometers to the east of Kolkata, you'll find that these mud banks suddenly arise. And within weeks, the shores of the riverbanks will have broadened so much by several feet or several meters sometimes. But the most part, these processes are cyclical. Every year, with every season, and there are 6 seasons in India. We don't like the English. We don't talk of 4 seasons, and in every such cyclical season, there are changes that are palpable, measurable, tangible. Now, this. What has happened is also for Kolkata, particularly in the last, say, 40 years, with tremendous abuse that has taken place in terms of what man has brought about as change, we have this accumulative and irreversible change that is clearly being seen. And many of those Kolkatans like Manoj Chakravorti have been documenting these things, or at least understanding them in their own ways. So these receding shorelines, or the steady intrusion of salt water, for instance, on lands that have previously been cultivated, these are also challenges that Kolkata faces, or the larger, micro-region of Kolkata faces. This is a landscape so dynamic, as I said, that its very changeability leads to several countless, innumerable moments of recognition, ecological recognition, I would say. The accelerating impacts of global warming itself that have happened, I would say, in the last 20 to 25 years at very perceived and perceptible levels, have begun to threaten the very existence of these low-lying areas like the Sundarbans. And those problems have far, far wider implications. I won't be surprised if some of you here who are listening to this already know that Kolkata, like Karachi on the other side, clearly faces the threat of several hectares, hundreds of hectares of land being sunk with the sea waters rising. That is all I will want to add as a context to what Manoj Chakravorti will present today. I'm not going to introduce Manoj Chakravorti. I will leave the honors to K Mitra, who is CEO of Lloyd Insulation. He's a very distinguished member of ISHRAE, former president. He's also a governing council member of the Prem Jain Memorial Trust, a man who has known Dr. Prem Jain very well for many years. And that was also one of the reasons why when KK said that he will want to host this chapter, instantly we agreed. We said a great honor that a man like KK Mitra, who moved to Kolkata only recently, and therefore he's not a Kolkatan like, say, Chakravorti is. And congratulations, KK, once again belated, however, or whatever, for being the head of Lloyd Insulation, very old and traditionally respected company. And I suppose one of those Boxwala companies in Kolkata. So you have a rare privilege of bringing about change in Kolkata. I will now leave the floor to you to see how you will introduce the speaker, and then the special address speaker, Arjan Roy also, after which we shall see how we will proceed with our sessions. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Hariharan. And it's a pleasure to today's initiator for the Prem Jain Memorial Lecture. So today we have two lectures for two distinct personalities. Manoj Chakravorti. Mr. Manoj Chakravorti has been one of the also very close associate having worked with Dr. Jain, and has been a renowned person in the eastern part of the country in terms of the air conditioning industry. He is very much a son of the soil, of the area, knows about the total demography of the entire eastern part of the country, and he will be able to carry about what are the aspects of environment in terms of the various developments, various constructions, or what are the challenges being faced nowadays, which not only in Calcutta, in fact, that can be seen in any other parts of the country. I mean, a lot of things can be taken from it. So he's going to speak on a very important topic, which is basically a synopsis of the environment impact, including the assessment of the environment. The environment is having a lot of impact on the various construction activities, various growth activities related to pollution, related to various other aspects. And what are the steps to mitigate the environmental impact? How you can make a management plan to take care of it. Also, we have got a speaker, Mr. Arjan Roy, a young man who has a tremendous love of nature, who has a tremendous love of Sundarbans. In fact, he has a passion of writing several books related to Sundarbans. He has written books as a solo or in association with various government, forest officials about the Sundarbans. What are the nature's impact, and how one of the important aspects of water bodies, which is a very important aspect in Kolkata areas, how they are having an impact. That's why his topic is also very interesting: residential landscapes and urban biodiversity. How a water body enhances both of them, that is both the residential landscapes and the urban biodiversity. Water bodies is an important aspect of Kolkatans, the life of Kolkata. The number of water bodies spread throughout the city. And it's a challenge also now with a lot of construction happening, real estate taking up. So how we can retain them, how the various architecture, the designing, how the city construction, town planners can continue with that, keeping all of them together. So a person who is having a love for the nature can only describe very nicely how this aspect it is. So these are the two presentations we'll have. So I would first invite Mr. Arjan Roy to make the first presentation titled Residential Landscapes and Urban Biodiversity, How a Water Body Enhances Both. Just to speak briefly about Arjan Basu Roy, he's an engineer. He has not only in engineering, he has extension to various types of other interest areas in the printing technology. He comes from one of the oldest university of not only Kolkata but India, that is Jadavpur University. He has a love for photography. He has a love for film, ornithology, and zoological. That's how he has been to the wild forest areas, Sundarban areas, how he made a deep study about the Sundarbans, the various, even nature like butterfly. He has a study on the birds which are available in the Sundarbans. He has made a lot of publications, lot of lecture programs are happening regularly across. He's associated with various activities with the local state government as well as with the other areas. He has a lot of posters and oral presentations, all exclusively on the nature. And today in his presentations, he will be covering about the nature. He'll be covering specifically about Kolkata and some of the typical case studies and how we can continue living with this nature. So may I invite now Arjan to please make a presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Mitra. Am I audible?
Yeah, you have to speak a bit loudly, slightly lower.
Slightly louder, or you must be closer to the mic.
Yeah.
Hello.
Yes, slightly closer to the mic, please. No, not yet.
Hello.
Go on. Yes, please.
So thank you for the elaborated introduction. I am from Kolkata. I was born in Kolkata, and I work with various aspects of wildlife as a whole. My area of work is a bit diverse. I work. I did my printing technology from Jadavpur, and hence I run a small business of publication. And also I'm associated with an NGO called Nature Mates. I'm a secretary of that. And then also we have now started a say sister concern called Biomates, which are into the business of urban landscaping and pond creation, mostly in and around Kolkata. Now we are operating. Shall I share the screen now?
Yes, please. Please do.
So as Mr. Mitra told, my topic for today's lecture is residential landscapes, urban biodiversity, and how a water body can enhance the both. I am talking mostly about the Kolkata scenario. So biodiversity and urban biodiversity are the same thing. The biodiversity which is hanging around the urban landscape is the biodiversity we are interested in. And while we are working with biodiversity and we are documenting biodiversity in my school, exactly in my school life, we get an idea that all the developers and builders who are working in and around the city, doing buildings, doing bridges, doing all sort of things, are almost like criminals to me and to the team who are working with biodiversity, because they are the people who are cutting down trees. They are the people who are, taking up the ponds and water bodies and converted it into land and making it landfills, and then they are doing whole lot of things which are completely against biodiversity, and they are doing it without any documentation. Means what we are losing remains completely undocumented. So we started documenting urban biodiversity, and we are amazed to see that Kolkata is having a wonderful hello.
Yes, please. Please go on. Please go on.
Just a minute. That Kolkata is having a wonderful number of diverse animal life and plant life, and we are losing them in a drastic way. So why we are losing them? Because change of land use pattern, change of their habitat, their remaining habitat, change in perception, we are converting all our small buildings into standalone flats, small home-like buildings into standalone flats, and then we are losing all the open spaces, all the soils, all the open ground for that. And with that, we are losing, every day we are losing some or other biodiversity element from our city. So then one thing struck me is, if instead of fighting against all these developers and builders and who are into making the city developed, making the city more concretized, rather than can I join them and be a part of them and try to take back whatever I can from them within their premises. Because at the end of the day, what I'm saying is, if there is any land parcel left in our city, it belongs to all those people who are doing bigger housing estates type things. So from there, we started an initiative called Biomix, where we started working with the developers and builders, and we are part in their landscape execution process, and started contributing in a very slow but in a steady manner, I must say, because the standard landscaping idea, what we found is more or less focusing entirely on aesthetics rather than local biodiversity, because sense of local biodiversity and need for them to protect and conserve is not within the agenda of their planning. So, but when I see when a builder is promoting its housing estate for sale, they are always showcasing the greeneries, the openness, etc. and etc. I hardly see any builder showcasing interior in their big banners, but they always showcase the landscape part. But in the landscape part, we were missing some elements which can actually hold the local biodiversity. As a group, as an NGO, we have a very good database of local biodiversity of Kolkata, from the minor animals like insects to the major animals like the mammals, birds, etc., the snakes and frogs, all of them. So we started putting things of the choice in the urban landscaping area. That's how I am related to this platform. That's how I am into this lecture today. This is the connection from where I get the invitation and I am delivering the lecture in front of you. So, urban biodiversity is the variety and variability of living organisms found in the city, the non-human counterpart. When we call a city is not only defined by its people. A city is also defined by its various other elements. A city is defined by a heronry sometimes. A city is defined by some beautiful bird life. Some, Kolkata definitely is defined by its civets, because there are loads of civets around, still now hanging around the older part of Kolkata. A city is also defined by its butterfly. My dream is to, be able to say that Kolkata is the city of butterflies someday. So, like that, city has many identities, and one of the major identities is definitely its animal and plant life. Kolkata is very rich in this aspect till now. Urban biodiversity is the sole thing that keeps it habitable for humans. It's not the good building, it's not the good road, but the biodiversity that plays the anchor role where people can live. If we lose the biodiversity, we will lose our own footings in our own city. Trust me, this is guaranteed. You cannot change this fact. So, importance of urban biodiversity is, biodiversity is something which is it's not prominent in your everyday life, in your day-to-day activity. You are not interacting with it consciously, but unconsciously, and definitely you are using biodiversity for various aspects every day, every moment. They are the source for your food, water, air. They are one of the guiding factors for your social interactions. They give you a good amount of learning every day by showcasing some or other elements of it. They are beautiful. They are truly the sensory stimulant. They allow you to breathe in fresh air. They allow you to be jovial. They allow you to, be calm, and they keep you connected as well. The philosophy behind planning must be shared with the inhabitants. Here I want to mention that when we are so much into a thing, but when we are planning the whole thing in the beginning, there is a misconnection that we are sensing many a time. Like when we are planning our city with plants and other things, why we are putting certain elements of biodiversity is not very well communicated with the people who will be going to live in that area or in that place. So there is, I found this is the part where the connection is missing. Whenever we are into a process of making a landscape, new landscape or new housing complexes, or area newly developed, we are not only putting the elements, we are definitely putting many elements which are directly related to biodiversity with different purpose. It's not only aesthetics; they have many other purposes as well. And why a plant is selected, why a pond is created, why some animals are allowed within the design, that has to be communicated very well, which is our section, which is largely missing even till date. That's one of the biggest, that is one of the biggest things that is hindering the process of, biodiversity conservation as a whole within our city and in many other places as well. Awareness about biodiversity is a must, and that is also that has to be integrated in our design and in our promotions as well. So this is the importance of nature, importance of biodiversity is very well known to many of us, to maybe to all of us, but how we are actually getting benefit out of it on our daily life, on our daily practices, is something largely misconceptualized, I may say, and that is one area. Because of that, we lose a significant amount of biodiversity, we lose a significant amount of scope of conservation.
Arjun, let me stop you here. And in order to ask you, and maybe we can have some of the other attendees also ask on the chat box. All of what you're talking about, what is its relevance Calcutta's own situation, since you're a combined ornithologist and a zoologist, and you have been traveling, those parts out of your own sense of curiosity of the environment and of biodiversity. So how does it connect is what I think, our listeners will also want to know.
Yeah, the connection is, biodiversity, the connection of biodiversity and wetland and,
That is obvious. That's obvious to most people. That's straight textbook. But I'm saying, what have you seen as empirical evidence and examples of things that have happened to the east of Kolkata or even to the southwest of Kolkata where you have your wetlands?
So if you go by that line, then with this change in landscape and change in land utilization pattern, Kolkata is designed in a very unique way. So the design is in accordance with the fact that the city is inclined towards the east, and the whole city is designed in a way that the entire city, west waters and everything, that then naturally towards the East Kolkata wetland, and the East Kolkata wetland is designed in a way that biodiversity, various elements of biodiversity actually take care of the city waste and filter them back to the mainstream. So Kolkata is a city where biodiversity was acting as a supportive element since its inception. It is one of the cities in India, I believe, in the world, one of the cities in the world where biodiversity elements were used to make the city better, to make the city healthier. And eventually what happened, the city planning was there during the British period. Then eventually we start developing by our own way, and we put up things which are absolutely conflicting with the master plan. So the whole city, the whole ambience of the city got disrupted, and it got disrupted in various ways. Kolkata is having around 3,000 ponds, which is listed listed in the KMC database, is plus 3,500 ponds actually we still have, but none of them are either maintained or properly taken care of. I say none of them, only a few maybe within the Victoria premises or in the main areas. Those are the ponds which get some sort of maintenance, but as a whole, and with all these things, what is happening, the balance of the city, the city has its hit points, city has its own various balancing points, but the natural balancing point of city Kolkata is under severe threat because the development post independence and mostly during 80s and 90s, they were absolutely not in alignment with the master plan of the city, how the city were perceived in the beginning. Kolkata is a city which is very new. It's not a very ancient city. It's only 300-year-old, 350 years old. And it was created in an era when there are various developments, various architectural things, various civil elements which were already developed, and those were instilled in the master plan. So, these are the things, and when we actually get into the subject, we wanted to install the idea of this biophilia among the city dwellers, so that's the only thing that can bring back the Kolkata in its glory. If we have the biodiversity and its biodiversity elements and the biodiversity habitat back into its proper shape, then only we can get back the glory of Kolkata in its full. Otherwise, it will just become a city of, it will be a city, it will be a concrete jungle in the long run.
So, if you go therefore to the Salt Lake City area and beyond into the wetlands,
yes.
When you talk about encroachment and therefore extinction and such possibilities that are becoming very clear, what do you think needs to be done in order to stop this? That is, the pressures exerted by the metropolis itself and its growth has to somehow be contained, right? And what would you want to therefore have as a single point agenda for Kolkata?
It has to be what I must say, you cannot stop development, because I live in a flat. So those who are not living in a good accommodation, being human, they also deserve to live in a better accommodation in the long run. So fellow people, all my city money, all the city dwellers who are in Kolkata, they will try to settle in a better, accommodation, in a better house or flat or something.
Yeah.
So, and you cannot stop that either. I don't think there is a way we can stop that.
Yeah.
But what we are trying, what I think is the sole thing that needs to be incorporated is the consideration for biodiversity element, the consideration of natural things into the design, and absolutely by putting all those things in the design from the beginning, and then try to make a thing where the inhabitants which were there earlier has a chance to survive even after the development. So what we always try to promote now is, whenever there is a development, whenever there is a idea of making a building or a bridge or something, we try to document the biodiversity elements foraging there at present time. And when we do the planning, when we do the design, when we do the execution of the design, we try to protect them and make sure that most of them can survive in the newly developed landscape as well. So the landscape is not only for the people who will be dwelling in it. It is
Sure.
also for the other non-human entities,
Right.
and to be supportive towards them.
Yeah,
So,
I would have, sort of helped you capture all this for the presentation, but I have another question. You know, for 1,000 years, I would think, and like you said, you are there. I mean, the oldest of the British cities, even if you are only about 350 years old. But the point is that your waste recycling wetlands have been enormously successful until about 2000 or so. Tell us the story of this waste recycling that the wetlands have done for Kolkata, and what is threatening that into the next 10, 15 years. And how has that collapsed? In the last 20 years, it has collapsed, as you know, right? Can you explain to us what that waste recycling process of the wetlands was and how we can revive it?
like I mentioned earlier, this is a very unique process in which it was happening.
Yes.
It was the city waste that was getting drained into the lowland of the eastern plains, and in that area, in those shallow wetlands,
Yes.
there are various floral components and faunal components, mostly fishes and clams, who actually utilize those waste as their food or as their nutrients, and they convert that water into a better quality water, which can then flow down to the Sundarbans, or can even be rechannelized into the mainstream city lines. But what happened is, for the short-term benefit, people abused the wetland. They completely destroyed the connectivity from various parts of Kolkata to that wetland, narrow down the channels, still maintain those channels, and the whole thing is now under severe state. The entire East Calcutta wetland is now fragmented very badly, and every now and then there are planning by the government, by the non-government agencies, by the private property owners, and we are developing it into residential areas or some industrial areas as well. And
that takes me to the shrinking of the wasteland, the wetlands itself. How much has it shrunk in the last, say, 20 years as a percentage? Would you have any idea? Can you explain it to our audience?
30% for sure.
30%.
For sure. And if you go by the impact of it, that impact of the 30% is much larger than the actual 30%, because you can understand that strategically it has its own relevance.
Right.
So that is one of where Kolkata is losing its balance, the balance of biodiversity it is having, and also that is where we are going into a direction which is now doubly threatened because of this climate change, impact of climate change, or the change in land use pattern in the forest ranges of Sundarbans. If you go to Sundarbans is a landmass of 110 islands. So 50% of those islands are occupied by human beings, and 50% of the islands are forest. But in the 50% islands, that 50 islands is now clubbed into 34 islands. Many smaller creeks and canals are now, developed into. First they make bridges, then those things narrow down, and then they are no more independent islands; they are clubbed island now. So we there have around 52 islands, which is now clubbed into 34 islands. So this is a huge change, and which has a very negative impact on Sundarban as a whole, because if you go by the development of this Rajarhat area and Salt Lake area, that was actually a river basin called Biodiversity River Basin. That Biodiversity was one of the major sweetwater source for Indian part of Sundarbans. Sundarbans have two major sources. One goes to Raimongol, which is the border of India and Bangladesh. The Bangladesh part also have the Brahmaputra basin, and Brahmaputra has enormous amount of supply. And we have the Hooghly, which is in the western side of Sundarban, western fringe of Sundarban. So the main area of Sundarban within the Indian territory is devoid of any sweetwater supply anymore. And for that, the increase in salinity across that line till the city is a very big threat to the city biodiversity, to the city waterscape. If you check into the fact sheet, Kolkata, the underground water table of Kolkata is almost 50-50. 50% of underground water is saline and 50% of it is sweet water. And it's overlapping also. Means there are basins where the sweet water is overlapping the salt water, and there are areas where salt water is overlapping the sweet water. So all these things are, creating a whole lot of jeopardy in the cityscape in various ways.
Tell us about the wastewater fisheries and how has it, declined over the last, say, 20 years. I mean, you went to a fish market in Kolkata. Typically, you got only fish from the wastewater wetlands, right?
No, typically now we get fish from Andhra Pradesh.
Okay, yeah.
The thing is, what happened with this development and with this change,
right?
Kolkata and West Bengal as a whole has a brilliant diversity of freshwater fishes. We don't eat fish all the same every day. We used to eat different fishes every day.
Sure.
From very small fishes to the bigger riverine fishes. But eventually what happened, now we only get fishes that are cultured. The natural fish fauna of West Bengal is almost collapsed. When we don't get fresh catches from rivers and lakes of West Bengal, and also the natural ponds, natural, big jheels that we have, beels and jheels we call. So all those fish fauna is now under severe threat. This is also because of, absolutely, ignorance, what I must say. That's why I'm very much focused into, promoting awareness among people, because unless you know what you have, it's very hard to conserve what you have. So this knowledge there is a very big knowledge gap among the local people. They know various recipes, but they don't know from where the main ingredients coming from. And they are not aware of from where these things are coming from, they are into the destruction process unknowingly. So they are destroying their own choices without understanding what they are doing.
Right.
So that is an area, and that is one of the sad part of what is happening in and around Kolkata and in West Bengal, in the southern Bengal, and in northern Bengal, surrounding Siliguri and cities like that. So that now when we are into the design, when we are into the city planning and all those things, I hardly see any consideration about when a landscape architecture person is providing a design or drawing. So they are now there is a trend of making 3D demonstration of what they are planning to do, and they always show water body with water filled up till the edge, crystal clear, very brilliant looking, and with many elements which are foreign, and that is not a possibility. And to do that, when I commit something to my buyers or those to whom we are selling our property, then you have to keep the commitment, and to keep that commitment, keep that water filled till the edge. There are bore wells created, and people are taking out groundwater and putting that into the pond and trying to maintain that. Pond is a dynamic system. Pond is a very dynamic system, and no pond on earth naturally can be maintained to the same level throughout the year. It is seasonal. It is having many connections underneath and from the surface, and with all these misconceptions and ignorance in the understanding of the process, we are destroying our own landscape every now and then, every day.
Yeah, for listeners, let me also tell you, and I'm sure Arjan will help us understand this better. There has been a traditional, very sensitive, subtle way of sequencing sewage ingress that comes from Kolkata, the city itself, into the wetlands, to farm fisheries. And the fish that used to come, now Arjan is telling us that it's becoming nearly extinct. But the fish that used to come from the wetlands, which is feeding on the sewage of Kolkata, remember, used to be a fish that was considered to be a fish that people thought was a delicacy. Is that right, Arjan?
It's the most regular fishes like the rohu and the katla and the mrigel, all those fishes.
Absolutely.
Live in 3 different layers. Some are bottom dwellers. So the whole fishery, even the fishes were selected in a way that they forage in 3 different layers, some from the surface, some from the middle layer of the water, and some from the bottom.
Absolutely.
So the fish fauna were selected in that way so that all those excreta that are coming and are dissolved in the water in various states and in various levels can be extracted by them as a food, and the water gets clear.
Absolutely. Therefore, to all of you, I'm saying essentially, Arjan is talking about how wastewater fisheries was one of the unique aspects of Kolkata as a settlement. Not today. I'm saying for centuries now, for 3-4 centuries. If you went back even to say 1960, 1970, I remember being there in 79, 80 for about 6-7 months. And the fish that you used to get from the wetlands, I don't remember what they call the wetlands there. Arjan will help me with the word for it. What do they call the wetlands in Bengali, Arjan? I've forgotten the word.
And in general, we call khalbil.
Khalbil. Right. And that fish used to be, and that used, people wouldn't even think of the fish actually feeding on sewage. They never thought of it that way. That is another remarkable part of Kolkata's culture, and of how there was a coexistence with the biodiversity that existed, all of which is gone in the last 40 years, as Arjan is saying. Go on, Arjan.
No, it's not all gone. It's still we have a significant amount of biodiversity, and this is now is the time when we have to be very considerate about them. And in this slide, we still have 10 different species of mammals at least, maybe some more if you consider all the rats and all the vermins and all the bats. Only bats is more than 10 species, I believe, in Kolkata sky, but in general 10, which includes the civet cat, the jungle cat, the squirrels, the bigger rats, the fruit bats, and all.
Right.
Then we have brilliant reptilian diversity even in today's day before last. I think on Monday night, I rescued a Russell viper from the city limit, within the city limit. We have 200 plus bird diversity. We have 100 plus species of butterflies. There are plenty of dragonflies. We have 400 plus tree species, more than 500 species of herbs and shrubs, 150 species of climbers, 50 plus species of aquatic flora, still prevailing, still surviving in our city. They need to be considered as a part of the city. That's the main thing we need to do. They are the city. They are the actual elements of on which Kolkata has survived till date. So this is the area where we need to focus. This is the area we need to incorporate in our design and incorporate in our thoughts, incorporate in our day-to-day activities. That is the essence of my talk. And I have some slides on various pond construction and all. If anyone is interested, I can show, or I will rather wait for questions or interactions, because that will be more helpful, I think, this part.
Thank you. Very nice, actually. To the rest of you, while you might have some questions or maybe you want to put it up in the chat box or whatever, all I will tell you is, in comparison, for example, if you're from say Bombay, you know that you're talking of a city of about 850 square kilometers. Bangalore is at about 700 square kilometers, but the density of Bombay is much higher because it's a longitudinal city and most of it is on the coastal side. Bangalore is a continental city. Calcutta again is a city which is sort of spread a little inland, but then it still continues to be in a sense not longitudinal. And it's a city that the British, as Arjun rightly pointed out, they planned it, and they planned it hugely well. You know, a lot of us carry a perception of Kolkata as a city which is densely populous, a city that is scaring you in terms of the numbers of people, etc. But let me give you some data. If I were to take, say, Calcutta, not Greater Calcutta, if I were to take just Calcutta, we are talking of only about 200 to 210 square kilometers of land. That's it, of Calcutta itself. And the population for this 200 square kilometers is about 4.5 to 5 million people. I may be wrong by about 0.2, 0.3 million on that figure. Now, the Greater Calcutta, if I were to take, for example, if the sort of encroachments that Arjun is talking about towards Salt Lake City and beyond and all that, that Greater Calcutta is about 1,700 square kilometers. Bangalore is 700, Bombay is about 900 odd square kilometers. This Greater Calcutta is at about 1,800 square kilometers, and that population is at about 15 million. However, remember another interesting data about Calcutta. While Bombay is at about 320 crore liters or 3.2 billion liters of water every day as daily water demand goes, Bangalore is at about 2 billion. Kolkata's figure, interestingly, is at about 1.4 billion, 140 crore liters a day. Now, that's because of this population here inside the city. I mean, I'm talking of grid supply of water. Grid supply of water for Kolkata is still at only about 140 crore liters, as against Bangalore's 200 crore liters, mind you, and Bombay's 300 crore liters. I will not even talk about NCR. NCR is another monster of another kind. So my point to you all is that Kolkata today, as Arjun is saying, is tremendously under pressure. And it was heartening, Arjun, for me to hear from you that it is not all lost, that we can still do some things to change. You want to show something here. Yes. Go on, Arjun. You have put this slide for some reason. We want you to explain that.
You are talking about those figures, so there are some figures.
Yeah.
And if you go by the Kolkata map,
yeah,
the Kolkata map, it has the green, this interdistributary marsh areas, which were the lifeline of Kolkata, which helped Kolkata survive all the hits and drought. Those areas are now almost vanishing.
Vanishing.
Absolutely, because we are converting the whole landscape into a very different form of landscape. If you go by the British design, you know, Kolkata is brilliantly designed if you consider the wind channels. So, you know, the Ganges was in the west and the East Calcutta wetland, and there are brilliantly designed wind channels flowing from east to west and north to south. But when we are now developing the city with these metro lines and with lots of flyover and all, so we are not considering those wind channels anymore. In no of the, I believe, not a single development of that height, which are actually interacting with the wind channel, were made considering the importance and the impact of the wind channel on the city. The wind channel plays a very big role because they help you to take out the, you know, the pollutants. They help you to make the city clean. They help you to make the city cool. And there are many other aspects. Those are not just money. Those are very considerate design. So what is happening is we are creating certain things on top of a thing which is very well planned, and now which is almost ignorant about all those planning and is overdoing everything. So, you know, I'm just going from Kolkata to the northern Bengal. In North Bengal, you get to heard about a lot of elephant and human-elephant conflict. So, if you go during the British period, they have put the settlement of the tea estates and all. So the entire tea estate thing in North Bengal is created by the Britishers. But they have a consideration for all the animals that are moving around. So they aligned all the settlements along with the elephant migration path. So none of the settlements were in direct conflict with the path. So what happened is, at that point of time, there are more elephants, but much less conflict. Now, we have much less elephants and more people, and to accommodate them, we ignore the fact that there is a migration pathway, and we have to give significant thought for that pathway to remain a pathway. When you are blocking a migration pathway of an animal like elephant, conflict is bound to happen. So this is something which is happening in Kolkata as a whole as well, because the planning of Kolkata and the present day Kolkata's planning, the earlier Kolkata planning and the present day planning happening in and around Kolkata, there is no consideration for the earlier plan in the large scale. That I must say.
Absolutely. In fact, when he talks about the elephant trail, you may also want to remember that this trail goes right across further to the east into Cambodia and Laos, through Burma. So it's a trail of about 3,800 kilometers and 6 countries, if I recall right.
Absolutely.
And this is at the very beginning of the trail, it is being affected so badly. And you can imagine what these pachyderms are suffering when it comes to their own, trails which go back in their memory for millions of years. It's a genetic memory that they carry. It's like many things that humans carry as genetic memory. And this kind of intervention from humans in the last 40, 50 years, would you agree with me on that, Arjun, that most of this destruction has happened in the last 40 or 50 years from 1970?
Post-independence.
Post-independence, absolutely.
So, we have a lag phase of, so-called development, say 50 to 65, 60, 66.
Right,
After
right.
65
right.
to mid of 90s, everything that happened there is completely wrong to me.
I know. True.
Any consideration for any other creature.
Yeah. Some of you will remember, there was a book by Dominic and Lapierre, sometime I think in the late 1970s, called The City of Joy. And we all have heard of Kolkata as the City of Joy. Some 15, 16 years ago, I remember Down to Earth published one feature, a cover feature, and called it City of Sorrows. And to my mind, Kolkata is that city of sorrows today, unfortunately. And more than 80% of Kolkatans themselves, however distinguished, however intelligent, Kolkatans are known to be, I can tell you that they're completely unaware of this massive destruction that is happening around them. And Arjun will agree with me on that, I'm sure.
That's why, education and awareness are not on the same page. We may have many educated people, but
agree
we
with you.
Have aware people.
I agree with you. You have all the wonderful looks in your city, but somewhere, the awareness down the line has not happened in your city, right?
And it's not, I must say, Doctor, that it's not only for Kolkata, it's for most of the, metro cities of India. It's not only for Kolkata.
I agree with
Kolkata is still, Kolkata is still a slow city compared to many other metros in India. Kolkata is still having some nuances which are missing in many other places. So I am quite optimistic. In spite of we have lost many a thing, we still have many a thing which can be taken care of. And if we all of us together, in our planning, in our design, in our thoughts, in our dreams, keep all these non-human elements, give these non-human elements some place, some consideration, we can still jump back to.
Agree with you. On that note of hope, I think we shall turn back to K Mitra for him to see how he wants to introduce Manoj, and then listen to Manoj and what he has to offer to us today. KK?
Yeah. So, Arjan, you want to have some more on the concluding remarks, anything on this, and some comments, closing comments for the viewers to understand and then take it up further?
So my only thing is, the only thing I want to say is, in whatever area of work we are into, we must not forget that for our own well-being, we have to be considerate about plants, about non-human entities in and around. And like I just want to give one example, cockroaches. Cockroaches, I don't believe in the entire this, all these 36 participants and 7 panelists. None of us will say, I love cockroaches, but we need cockroaches as well. Cockroaches live in the deepest area of the plumbing line, and they used to eat up certain things which cannot be cleaned by any human intervention, unless otherwise you have to take down the entire plumbing line and change it. So we don't like to have cockroaches around, but the cockroaches are also playing a very important role in our daily life on a daily basis, which we are not absolutely aware of. So all the non-human entities has their role to play, and in our planning, in our design, in our thought, in our examples, in our daily exercises, we have to keep them in mind and do things accordingly.
And I mean, can we mimic this idea of wastewater fisheries in other metropolitan cities of India?
No, wetlands are very unique to Kolkata. It can't happen anywhere else. Very, very unique.
Quite a tough thing to do. It's not very easy. It was, the geography of Kolkata and at the time when they planned, the situation was much easy to handle. Now with the population pressure, now with the, already fragmented development without any master plan, this type of planning will be very tough in anywhere.
KK, any weekend, if you have the time, please drive down to Chandra, the original, French capital, and then a little further to the east of it, another 30-40 kilometers, and you'll get a personal, direct, shall we say, encounter with what the wetlands mean to Kolkata. And Chandra is on the coast again. So it's very unique. What Kolkata has is very unique. And that is why I was very fascinated when you first suggested, when we first thought that we will come to the east, to Kolkata, to try and, have someone talk about biodiversity and the complexities that you have in your region. Lovely listening to Arjan. Over to you, KK.
Yeah. Thank you, Arjan, for the very nice presentation. And it is just the beginning. We will be having more such interactions later on again. We look forward. So now we go to the next presentation, which is from a very eminent person, Mr. Manoj Chakravorti. He'll be speaking on the synopsis of, in short, called EIA and EMP, that is Environment Impact and the Environment Management Program. Just to introduce Mr. Manoj Chakravorti, he is the founder president of ASHRAE India chapter, and he has been the past national president of ISHRAE. He is having more than 40 years experience in the construction industry and typically into the HVAC. He's a graduate engineer from one of the oldest engineering college of West Bengal, that's located in Sirpur. And he has been associated into various types of technological aspects, various types of technical developments related to construction, environment. And in today's presentation, one of the most important aspects will be what environment has an impact into this construction industry. It's not only for the eastern part of the country, it is well spread out to most parts of the country, and it is becoming very challenging on how we can sustain and yet consider them as part of the total construction elements. So I invite Mr. Manoj Chakravorti to kindly make his presentation.
Thank you, KK. Thank you, Dr. Hariharan. Good afternoon to everybody. I think I am audible now?
Very, very loud and clear. And may I also request you to sort of address 2-3 questions that have come on the Q&A when you are talking about the EIAs and so on. Questions that, of course, Arjan can take later or you can take in your own ways.
No problem. You can also ask. I can, or I can take normally what are the challenges faced. Basically, we are talking about environment for a long time. That is, since people have become very much careful about environment since 1980s. But all these things, we became first, we talk about environment means outside. And then nowadays, we are talking much about environment, that is the indoor, since most of the time of a day we spend indoor. But one thing, what was piece of what was in the mind of even the gentleman for whom we are dedicated everything. That is Dr. P.C. Jain. He loves environment. He loves environment, but at the same time, we will also have to see how we can keep the environment intact as far as possible. At the same time, we will have to go for urbanization, industrialization, and development of the country. And whenever any industrialization, urbanization, or any development or any project comes, then there must be some impact on the environment. And unless we keep the environment okay, our society also will not be okay. So what is this impact? How we can assess this impact? It is basically, first I have designed what is this. It is environmental impact assessment is basically a systematic identification and evaluation of potential impact due to certain proposed activity to different components of environment. In other words, it is a study of various impacts on the environment due to certain upcoming activities. And we cannot get rid of the impact, but we also have the mitigation and procedure, how we can mitigate the impacts. Next. What is first, we will have to make the study. What is the probable impact which can come? We will have to, now this impact is always with respect to the baseline. We will have to collect the baseline information, then only we can compare what is the actual. Now I was just listening my earlier presentation, very good, what Dr. Hariharan was talking about wetlands and all these things. In fact, Calcutta is now having a under the great threat. What he has told, that is right, because if we go initially, please correct me if I'm wrong, that Calcutta slope was from towards the eastern side, that is from Ganges towards the eastern side. Now the Calcutta development has taken place instead. All these salt lakes, then Newtown, lot of areas, salt lake was totally a wetlands. Now, due to the filling of these wetlands in the eastern side, the level has gone high. So it's Calcutta's level has now become like a cavity. From one side, water will come and it cannot go. It will just become a sort of concave surface. So unless we pump it, it will not be possible. Normal slope is not available nowadays. And that is the reason why we are facing so much difficulties in Calcutta when the rainfall takes place. But there are a lot of areas even where the waterlogging used to be there for a long time. Anyway, that is thing how we can mitigate. But now that is besides the point. Let us come to impact assessment. In the basically what we will have to study, collection of all the information, baseline environmental quality data. Whatever quality data, baseline data are available, we will have to collect it. Then reviewing of upcoming activity and projects. What is the upcoming activity or project coming? We will have to review and then finally develop the environmental management plan to mitigate the detrimental impact due to construction and operation of the project. Hence, we will have to find out some mitigating plan so that whatever detrimental effect comes due to this construction or the operation of the project, how we can mitigate it and we can bring back the environment in the normal condition, conducive condition, which is good for everyone. And then suggest the post-project monitoring program. That means once we implement to mitigate that problems, that is not the end, because we will have to go for continuous monitoring of this program. Next. The major studies of EIS, what it includes? It includes the hydrology, availability of water and quality of water. Then meteorology means what is the ambient conditions. Then air quality, air quality, noise, geology, soil, ecology, land use, in the land use, demography, socio-economic conditions, normal baseline data generation is now normal baseline data generation. What is the area we should consider? The development or the project or the industrialization where it is taking place, we should take the normal baseline data within 10-kilometer radius of the project points. And we should consider that area after these projects implementation used to take place during construction and during after commissioning. What are the conditions? Then we should compare it with this baseline data. Next. Establishing the baseline data, how we can, water quality, how we can do it, even we can take the samples, minimum 2 samples of groundwater and minimum number of samples of 1 for the surface water we should take for characterization of water quality in the area. The area where it is taking place was one is groundwater, another is surface water. Both samples we should collect, we should check and characterize the water quality in that area. Sample must be collected during the study period, and analysis of the collected sample for physical, chemical, biological, bacteriological parameters, including heavy metals. But these are the parameters which we will have to study, and we will have to keep a record of that. Now next comes air quality. Ambient air quality monitoring are data of state pollution control boards to be collected to assess the baseline air quality status. Because state pollution control board has got all the data, and those data has to be collected for baseline data, and collection and monitoring data we will have to collect normally 24 hours hourly, twice in a week we will have to collect from the various stations, and that stations we will have to select in and around 10-kilometer radius of the project site. We will have to select the number of stations for monitoring not only air quality, meteorological, noise, and everything. What are the parameters for air quality to be analyzed? One is SPM, that suspended particulate matter. Another is respirable particulate matter, that RPM. Then oxides of sulfur, oxides of nitrogen, oxides of carbon. These are the basic parameters for air quality we require to be analyzed. Next. Meteorology, when we talk about, it is collected from Indian Meteorological Department, and for 10 years for assessing baseline data. We will have to create the baseline data. And what are the data includes? It is the temperature, relative humidity, then rainfall, cloud cover, atmospheric pressure, evaporation rate, wind speed, and direction of the wind. These are the most important parameters. That's why it has been taken into consideration. And these data are collected from the meteorological department. Next. Hydrology, profile of surface hydrology of important water bodies of the area to be obtained from the government department, groundwater potential availability, aquifer characteristics, etc., to be established from the available records of GSI and Central Groundwater Board. These data we can get it from GSI or Central Groundwater Board. Hydrological is used to determine the impact of water quality due to discharge from the upcoming projects, because a lot of discharge can take place, whether it is industrial or residential or a complex building. lot of discharge will automatically take place, so that can affect the hydrology. Geology of the area, that is stratigraphic formation, rock classification, lichenology, etc., to be obtained from GSI. GSI will be able to give all these data, so those will be the baseline data. Now, soil samples, at least 3 samples to be collected and to analyze the soil quality parameters. This is required to predict the impact due to solid waste disposal from the proposed project, present soil condition, and after the project implementation takes place, that discharge of solid waste or accumulation of solid waste or any leaching action, and due to this solid waste discharge, if anything takes place with the existing soil or not, that has to be studied. Next. Terrestrial and aquatic ecology, flora and fauna of the area within 10 kilometers is basically the norm stipulated by MOEF. 10 kilometer radius of the project site is normally analyzed based on the available data. Aquatic ecological status of the area need to be analyzed based on the available data from the other research agency, because this is normally a lot of agencies used to keep this data, so those has to be kept. Land use classifications such as commercial, industrial, residential, forest, agricultural lands, water bodies, transportation and communication facilities shall be identified from the census reports and other available sources. That is for the baseline. Next. Demography and socioeconomics, a detailed study of the population and its growth, employment, its ethnic characteristics, source of livelihood, amenities, etc., to be obtained from census report and other published sources. Impact due to the proposed activity has to be predicted. Now, everywhere we make a comparison between the baseline vis-a-vis the actual due to the development or due to new project. Land use background noise level to be nominated at different station. Actually, it is to be measured at different station covering different land use type. Instantaneous noise level shall be recorded for 24 hours period, once in each monitoring station, and equivalent noise level for daytime and nighttime condition shall be established. So these are the noise points what we will have to monitor. Next. And this noise monitoring also will be carried out at the specific station point which has been selected to collect the data for assessment of the environment. Demography and socioeconomics, a detailed study of the population and its growth, employment, its ethnic characteristic sources, livelihood, amenities, etc. to be obtained from. I think I have already covered it. And next is qualification of the environmental, quantification of the environmental impacts. How to quantify the environmental impact. Impact on surface water quality due to discharge of wastewater from the project to be assessed. Now, in a project, lot of wastewater is generated, and in many cases we have tried to recycle that wastewater, and even it is not from industry, other than industry also, or residential. In residential case also, we can recycle the wastewater, we can treat the wastewater and recycle it for various purposes, like even gardening and horticulture, we use it, and for industry, for various purposes, we can use it. I can tell in one of the cases in 1996, 97, and I was actually conducting one, I was designing one project, and that was the currency printing press. at Shalmuni is one, another was Mysore. This is the project of Government of India. There, the entire currency printing is done into a factory which is 100% air conditioned. And total air conditioning load works out to be Shalmuni 3,500 tons. And that plant of Shalmuni, including the township, was totally depending on 5 number of borewells. No river was passing. So this site was selected. And because it was a defense land, so land transfer and acquisition and government to government became easy. However, it was found that if we go for water-cooled system for air conditioning, we can save power. If we go for air-cooled system, our both capital cost and operating cost will go very high, because Shalmuni is a place where even the ambient temperature in the month of summer goes above 45. So efficiency-wise, we will not be getting good equipments. So, but at the same time, if we go for water-cooled system, we will be requiring around 30 cubic meter of water per hour. And it was a plant of 18 hours operation. That means average you can tell 500 cubic meter of water per day requirement. So it's a huge water. That is the everyday requirement. So what we have thought of, we thought of recycling the sewage water. Whatever sewage will be generating in the plant and whatever sewage will be generating in the township, all will be treating, and even after that we will treat tertiary, and then that tertiary treated water will be used as cooling tower maker. And in case of any extra water left out, we can use it for gardening and horticulture. And you know, till now the same thing is going on and the plant is running successfully. That means this wastewater, what is generated in the entire thing, it was not added outside to outside drainage system. That was a great, I consider that's a great achievement of recycling the resources of nature. Natural resource or environmental resource also we have not damaged. Then impact of air quality due to increased vehicular movement caused by the project to be studied. It is not only due to air quality, is not only due to vehicular movement, but also sometimes in industry also due to technological thing, in whatever exhaust comes out, that exhaust also damage the surrounding air unless they are properly treated and utilized or recycled. Or in some cases, I have seen, we have done it in hot air when we release to environment. There we have removed that heat by application of say recuperator, and that waste heat recovery we have utilized in some other purpose, and thereby we have saved the nature to a great extent. Then impact on the land use of the area due to creator of the project to be determined. Then consequential impact on the terrestrial and aquatic ecosystem due to change in air and water quality to be prepared with reference to past research and baseline data. Baseline, all what we will have to do, we'll have to see whether it is going up or it is down. If it is down the baseline, that means if we can rather save the environment, it is always desirable. Then impact on soil due to disposal of solid waste to be compared with respect to the baseline. Yes, we do not have any right to spoil the existing soil. We will have to take all the mitigating steps before we dump or throw any of the waste. Next.
Can I request you to close in about 3-4 minutes, if you don't mind?
Okay. Then basically, what I mean to say that we should always keep, if we try to keep the environment and intact or not detrimental for the human being, because this environment is for whom? It is for the people. So if the people are okay with, conducive for the environment, and if we can create something which is conducive for the people, yes, this is good environment. And that environment is not only air quality, water quality and all. It is everything put together. Today's socio-economic pattern also we will have to see. When we set up an industry, if we come to a place which is basically agricultural place, people earning with the agriculture, if we want to set up an industry, then obviously there will be some effect on their earning or on their livelihoods. So we should keep all these things in mind, and once we keep all these things in mind, we can see that yes, this project or this development or this industrialization has really helped the society in true sense. It is not that today we are making hundreds of buildings, but this making these hundreds of buildings causing the problem of one crore people. It is not the aim. It should not be the aim. So when we consider the environmental impact assessment, we will have to consider all these things. Now, all this thing has got the mitigating plan, and that plan has to come from the top. And if it comes from the top, automatically it will become successful. And awareness is the first thing. We should start from the awareness and campaigning process. And once we can make the people aware about the total problems, what one can face tomorrow, and if people realizes today we are okay, but after 5 years we will have this problem, then automatically people will start practicing on the good thing. That is what I want to mean.
Sure, wonderful. That's a nice concluding note that you offered, just as Arjan did. All I would request all of you listeners to remember at the end of this conversation that we have had with these two distinguished speakers is that these EKW, as it's called, the East Kolkata wetlands, are really the kidneys of the city. You must know this. Many of you will know that Kolkata has no water purification system at all in place other than EKW. And when you next visit that city, I request you to take a ride towards the Central Lake Channel. It's a long road. It travels about 45-50 kilometers. And you'll see that alongside the road is the canal. And that channel carries sewage needed for farmers, thousands of farmers, for their fish ponds. What is really stark about Kolkata's east, and the wetlands is that, like our Manoj also pointed out, one is that they have made the city into a sort of a concave place where it's become a major trap for inundation and for flood threats. If you remember Chennai in 2015, you will, and anytime you think of Calcutta and monsoons, you can think of only, water on roads, on some of the main arterial roads of Kolkata also, at some 2 feet, 3 feet, and so on. You all know that. And what it means is, therefore, this city, if it has to actually get to be sensibly planned, as both of them told us, it has to see what it will do to that population of people. It's a large, incredibly large population, which is dependent, mostly poor, which is dependent on fisheries and on vegetables. About 200 tons of vegetables come from those parts into Kolkata. Remember, therefore, the kidneys of Kolkata as one part of this conversation today. I shall now I have the privilege of inviting the Amravati chapter chairperson, Vijay Sai Meka, who is going to be the host of the next session, which is again a very, very lovely and interesting session. He has found a lovely speaker called Bablu Ganguly, but I will now leave the floor to Vijay to try and see what he wants to offer us. Thank you so much, Vijay, for being the host for September. You have to unmute, please. You have to, yeah. Yes, please.
Good evening, everyone. I wish to thank Dr. Prem Jain Memorial Trust members for giving us IGBC Amaravati chapter to host the next Dr. Prem Jain Distinguished Lecture Series. On behalf of IGBC Amaravati chapter, we wish to appreciate the efforts of trust members led by Srimati Payal Jain and Mr. Hariharan, who is actively involved in the trust activities. We are fortunate to work with our beloved Dr. Prem Jain, and his relentless effort paved the way for the growth of IGBC, which reached greater heights under his leadership. He is so wonderful and mesmerized everyone with his warm hug and smile. I enjoyed every moment I spent with him, especially in Goa, and his visit to Vijayawada comes under Amaravati chapter, Andhra Pradesh. He spent the whole day with lots of enthusiasm and energy up to night 10 p.m., meeting every student of SPA Vijayawada, interacting with them and encouraging them with his usual style. His spirit is unbelievable, and when it comes to the activities of IGBC, he is unstoppable. He is the guiding force and inspires so many like me in IGBC. So we requested him to launch IGBC chapter, but he is not able to present for the launch. Later, at our request, he came all the way to meet and inspire IGBC Amaravati chapter members. He always loved to meet and interact with the students. SPAs are like his home. He always wishes to go there and interact with them, be it in Delhi or Vijayawada. His motivation skills are very special, as very few can motivate so many like us for a social cause, not for profit. The two images shown here are the ample proof of his charisma and ability to lead the team. Itendra, can you show the images?
We have seen it. We have seen them both.
Okay. IGBC Amaravati chapter is launched on 24th June 2017 with place of worship certification to world famous Lord Venkateshwara Swami and Padmavati Amma temples. So when our IGBC team has studied both these temples at Tirupati and Tirumala, they are automatically eligible for place of worship certification without a single modification. We launched 6 student chapters under Amaravati chapter, and also facilitated for 2 biggest railway station certification, that is Vijayawada and Tirupati. So where actually if we spread this message, it will reach lakhs of people every day. If we're able to spread this green building concept messages in the railway station, it will automatically reach the whole society. Another biggest achievement of our IGBC Amaravati chapter is certification of 6 villages in 1 assembly constituency. The 9th edition of Distinguished Lecture Series is hosted by IGBC Amaravati chapter on 27th September. The speaker we are going to present is Mr. C.K. Ganguly, popularly called as Bablu. He is the chairperson of the Timbuktu Collective, a registered not-for-profit organization initiated in 1990, working for sustainable development in the drought-prone area of Anantapur district of Andhra Pradesh, India. C.K. Bablu Ganguly is a development activist, social entrepreneur, and a change maker with 40 years of experience working with marginalized and rural population in Anantapuram and Chittoor districts of Andhra Pradesh. As the chief functionary and executive director of the collective, Bablu provides overall leadership to the organization and directs its effort to promote several producer-owned rural business enterprise. Besides his work with the collective, Bablu is a member of the World IFORM Organic International, the international umbrella organization of the organic world. Bablu also worked with the Young India project from 1978 to 1990, where he was a community organizer, project director, and chairperson. While at YEP, he co-founded the Federation of Andhra Pradesh Agricultural Labours Unions. Bablu is a commerce graduate from Bangalore University.
How long have you known him, Vijay?
Maybe a year.
About a year. Oh, recently. Okay.
Yeah.
I met him many years ago, and
Okay.
in the
I
early
read
90s.
an article in local Telugu daily about the program,
Okay.
and then got connected.
If I remember right, I must have met him in 89 or 90 first,
Okay.
and we have known each other therefore for about 30 years now.
Okay.
Nice. I'm sure you will expand upon this profile of Bablu's, in the next session. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah.
And well, it's 90 minutes, a little more than we normally have. I must very sincerely thank K Mitra for having made this event happen. And I know he has a crazy schedule. He has a new assignment, challenging assignment to handle. And yet he managed to see that this happens. You found, I must say, KK, that you found two very fine, thought-provoking speakers. Arjan was very good, very reflective on what he wanted to. And listening to Manoj, I can see how, when he talked about the trade-off between water-cooled and, let's say, the air-cooled systems, you're all experts at that. I dare not say much, but the point is that there are nice trade-offs one can make and synthesize the right solutions given what you have as local challenges or local requirements, let us say. Thank you so much, KK, for having been here. Any last words from you for concluding this meeting, since you are the host?
Yeah, but thank you. The objective was to present before the audience some typical aspects of the eastern part of India, Kolkata, one of the oldest city, and which is very typically having a lot of environment challenges, depleting water bodies, Sundarbans. So it was something which we wanted to share to all the participants, that what we can tell you about this part of the country and what are the challenges and what are the real beauty which is there. So the nature is very important, which was very close to Dr. Jain. And we also talked about environment, because yes, Dr. Jain was apart from environment loving, he was also one of the I would say the Bhisma Pitamaha of the HVAC industry. So yes, the construction is also related nowadays to environment. We say HVAC cannot go without environment. So amalgamation with the environment, that's what Mr. Manoj tried to put up, that what the challenges environment have and how the projects can take up. So once again, thanks. And I hope participants enjoyed the presentation, and definitely any questions which we could not take can be sent to the to PJMT, and we will definitely take care to answer that. Thanks. Right. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Thanks all of you and I don't want to overstay because you all will have committed, this much time. I value your time, value the time that all of you as attendees have offered, as well as, of course, the distinguished panelists here. Thanks once again. Payal, any words from you, or should we close?
Nothing, just wanted to say thank you to everybody, Doctor, for a wonderful session.
Absolutely.
Enjoyed myself. Sorry, I was in a bit of a noisy place, so I stayed on mute. But thank you very much. Want to thank our speakers. Great. Thank you, Mr. Mitra, for making this possible. Thank you, Doctor. Thank you to the entire PJMT team, which has been standing strong through this whole thing.
Absolutely. Yatin, thanks a lot for everything that you do, and the rest of them in the team. That closes, therefore, edition 8 of the Distinguished Lecture Series of the PJMT Trust. Thanks once again to all of you. Yeah. Thank you. Bye. 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 Bye.